Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you need additional time, I'll...
No, that's right.
Okay. Mr. Hill, permit me to thank you for indicating that technology is important and that we should be careful about how we raid some of these funds because I, too, am concerned about that approach. So I thank you for bringing it up and mentioning the latter part, which has to do with some of the actions that we take without going through regular order. Let me ask this of you. I understand the profile of the hacker. I understand that profile, and I'm talking now more specifically about identity theft. What I'm not sure of is the profile of the person who actually acquires the information in this dark world that we've been talking about and actually uses it. Is this a person who purchases 1,000 identities and proceeds with that 1,000 trying to do as much mischief as possible, or does a person acquire one identity and work that? What is the profile of the criminal mind and the criminal who does this?
Sir, I think using one slice is there is no one profile. And if you take the OPM case, I'm pretty confident, wearing my former counterintelligence hat, that there are some very happy Chinese counterintelligence officers right now who are combing through our information to identify vulnerabilities in U.S. employees and trying to exploit those vulnerabilities for recruitment.
Is it your general consensus that this is, the profile would not simply be a person who happens to live in the United States? Do we have people who live in our country who acquire this information and use it?
Yeah, there's certainly a criminal element as well. So I think each attack is very varied. I don't think there's one flavor. And I think it could either be used to sell on, as my colleagues were mentioning, the dark web. It could be used by a nation state to conduct counterintelligence activities. So I think there's a broad range of ways to use this critical information.
I'm concerned right now about people within the United States because you've talked about some of the sanctions that can be imposed. And while litigation is a possibility, when you're talking about litigation in a international setting, it can be quite difficult because of treaties and other things that would be necessary. But let's talk about people within the United States. Do we find that we have people who are going into this dark place and acquiring this information and using it, and they live right here in the United States? They're among us.
Yes, sir, that happens, and many times they're prosecuted.
And what I'm my next question is, do they purchase one identity or do they purchase 1,000? I'm trying to get some sense of how this information is actually used. Is it used by a single perpetrator with one identity, or does this perpetrator decide that I'll just sit here and I'll create 20 different identities and I'll find a way to make money doing it?
Sir, the cases I've seen typically involve either the bulk collection, the bulk sale, or bulk fraud associated with that data. You tend not to see single actors with a few identities.
Now, let's go back to, you spoke of rewards, almost as though this would be a bounty. Would you explain how you think that might work, the reward system?
Well, it could model something like the Qui Tam system, where you have individuals who notice that there are nefarious activities. For example, the whistleblower program, where they bring these activities to law enforcement and they get rewarded for that. And I think it could be a system that's very similar to that system, where there is rewards provided by government, federal, state, and local government for individuals who report cybercrime.
Now, what's the fallacy in this, if you think that there's a fallacy, someone else? What's the fallacy in providing a reward for a whistleblower, as it were, different type, who brings evidence to the government for prosecution purposes? What's the fallacy in that? All right, I take it that that is something that you would all agree is feasible and doable and something that we should consider.
I'll just say it's the first time I've heard of such a thing, so I don't really have an opinion at this point.
And you probably want to put bounds around, just like in the conventional world, bounty hunting in general. So I haven't really thought about this in such a way. But if you go back in our history with piracy, yes, we did have the letters of marque, and the U.S. government enabled and empowered entities to not only get a bounty, but keep the booty, literally, in terms of some of the activity there. They were sanctioned by the government.
If I may quickly, Mr. Chairman, but I think that this has been indicated to be a system of providing information, intelligence to the government, not acquiring assets, public or individual not acquiring assets, but providing information. Is that what you're talking about, sir?
That's right, but I think in the current construct, I think the switch from providing information on cyber attack to information on putting on the time machine hat on an attack on the open seas is, I see very little daylight actually between the two. I think they both cause incredible damage to our country.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I owe you 1 minute and 6 seconds.